And welcome back to JKLIVE live here at Citizen Television. On the bench today, the Provost of the All Saints Cathedral, the very Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina. I've been memorizing that for the past few weeks. Very Reverend.
just say the outgoing Provost.
But you know, I first met this wonderful young man, I think 4 years ago. It was the funeral. We're planning the funeral of Bob Collymore, remember?
Bob Collymore,
yes.
Yes.
And we came to see you. In fact, Peter Kenneth was reminding me earlier today.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, when I told him that I was going to interview you today, he says, do you remember that morning when he gave us such a hard time?
Yes.
That morning, remember? He said, this is how my service is going to be conducted. And you will do this, I will do this, I will do this. And it was so to the book. And I said, who is this guy?
I know.
Do you know I ended up seeing you 3 times that month?
Yes.
3 funerals, remember, services.
In fact, Jeff, I don't think you had met such a guy who was tough on you.
Yes.
You even asked me, which school did you go to? maybe you thought I went to St. Mary's. Oh. No, I didn't go to St. Mary's. I went to a village school. Village schools can produce people as well.
Man, it was very enlightening, by the way. But there was 3 funerals that month, remember?
Yes, yes.
Bob Collymore.
But because
Kirene and my uncle Nick Muriuki.
Yes, but because you also behaved very well and you knew my standards.
Yes.
I gave you the emceeing and you did fantastically well.
Thank you. Thank you. You're going to miss this place, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I've enjoyed my tenure. Cathedral, I must say, well, Nakuru built me my first 17 years. But my last 13 years have been built by the All Saints. And All Saints has given me a platform that I used for ministering to them, but also ministering to the Anglican churches in Kenya and setting a good standard as a cathedral of the province, but also serving the nation. It's not something I ever thought that I would do.
Speaking of serving the nation, and this is something, we have to commend you for, because for a long time the church had taken a back seat when it came to politics. You refuse to take that back seat. You speak whenever you get a chance. You're fearless in your outspokenness. I
hope I'm fearless. Jeff, behind every fearless face is a fearful man. Sometimes I don't enjoy doing it. But when, you see, and today, as I was preparing for today, I remember the words of Exodus, where God tells Moses, the cry of the people has come to my ears. You must save the people. You must deliver them. So, if God can be grieved by the state of a nation, a state of a people, why would I sit pretty at the cathedral there when I see my country being robbed and seeing a few people getting wealthy while the rest of the people are poor? As a pastor, I meet poor people, real poor people. One of the things that I've done at All Saints Cathedral is to identify children who are genuinely poor but willing to go to school, and we pay their school fees. But I ask myself, am I not a taxpayer? Don't we pay our VATs and taxes? Why shouldn't the government provide a good school? For heaven's sake, a primary school. If you look at some of our primary schools, especially in the villages, gosh, you'd think you are in a cowshed. Why would I be comfortable when I see that happening? Just like Moses, I'll be troubled. I will speak. I will use my power and the platform God has given me. Look at our high schools. Now, we have mismanaged our health care. We have also mismanaged the education that now private hospitals and private schools have come up. And now education is so expensive in Kenya. Would I sit pretty as a minister of the gospel? I carry the burden of God, and his people are there. And that's why I've used, and I'll continue to speak.
Yeah.
And every clergy who serves people cannot be comfortable.
When you see the standard of living going through the roof, when you see fuel prices going through the roof, unga, basics, we're 60 years old this year. 1963 to 2020, we are 60 years old. The standard of poverty has just gone through the roof and doesn't seem to be getting any better. And the politicians keep promising us a better day, a brighter day.
You know, when during colonial times and during the missionary time, we were talking of building schools to deal with our ignorance. We are still dying of ignorance. And ignorance is not about having bachelor's degrees. It's the ability to reason out and make your life better. Hospitals were being built to deal with the healthcare. Today, when you look at this nation, you ask, what is wrong with us? However, if you look at the political class, they have continued to live a certain standard of life. So who sang this song, Ninani Mshenzi, Ninani Mjinga, Kaka?
King Kaka.
King Kaka. So nani mjinga hapa? It's not them. It is us. And we are cheated on and cheated on. Talking of the cost of living, let's talk about the current government. They came on the promise that they were going to make life bearable. Listen to President Ruto when he was deputy. Listen to him during the campaign trails. It's like you are reading two different people. I know reality is hitting him hard. He promised so much, he's delivering too little. But you know what, Jeff? What I expected the president to do immediately he was elected, it is to declare corruption his biggest enemy. Now, he's reacting seven months after realizing that people around him, the people he appoints, were people had questionable characters. Sometimes he's just taking people from two communities alone. Kenya doesn't belong to two communities. And even his appointment is not based on meritocracy. It has to do with rewarding people. How do you appoint 52 assistant administrators? What for? Why don't you cut spending? Do you know why Kenyans cannot trust this government? It is because of the deficit of trust that we suffer as a nation. We can't trust our leaders. They have cheated on us for so long. From Mzee Jomo Kenyatta coming all the way, it's only Mzee Kibaki that tried, especially his first term. The second term had a lot of problems, but give credit to that Mzee. President Uhuru, with all his challenges, give him credit, he really tried. But the signs that we are seeing today are dangerous. This country, we cannot sustain ourselves. President Ruto, when he was on his campaign trail, talked about removing some of the levies in fuel. He should have done that as a gentleman. Number two, provide food. 63-year-old man or woman who cannot feed themselves, then there's a serious problem with those people. If we can't feed ourselves on the basic, then there's a total collapse of our systems. If you look at the government expenditure, if I was the president, I would want to cut cost. We know where money gets lost. Government will come up with big projects, but we know they are the suppliers of those materials. Their relatives are the suppliers. It's a cartel of political leaders that continue to enjoy while the rest of us are hungry. And so it will come a time Kenyans will say no. Today, Jeff, tell your son or daughter that if you worked hard in school, you will become this. Yeah. As we grew up, we were being told by our parents, mkisoma, mtakuwa. So we worked hard. Today, don't try that narrative with our children. Why? They will ask you, so that politician, which school did they go? Or that pastor, who has so much money, which school did they go for? And because we have created a culture of thieves, our children, today, if you ask them whether they would cheat in an exam, they will.
Yeah.
Look at the kind of security we put around exam time. It tells you parents are thieves, they are producing children that are thieves, and we create a culture. But let me tell you, let me apportion blame on our own political leaders. Unfortunately, pastors are not even helping. So those two guys, but in terms of managing our expenditure, if you look at the budgets of State House, if you look at the procurement and what happens around, because we know, Jeff, then who, ni nani mjinga hapa? Ni sisi, wajinga.
And look, already scandals are popping up everywhere. KEMSA, sugar. I mean, how does sugar disappear from warehouses and now end up in the streets?
Now, Jeff, and we said it even during Uhuru's, and I came here and I have said that many times. When we are told at least 2 billion shillings are lost every day, thank you that the president was truthful. At least. Multiply that by 365 days. What does that mean in terms of healthcare, education, and road infrastructure? It would change this country, but it goes to people's pockets. Even the former president gave a directive that KEMSA should actually give a report in 21 days. He left as president without receiving that. Now, you think this sugar, the government doesn't know the thief? Maybe, and I'm only using maybe, those people who are arrested and arraigned in court may not be the real guys. There are guys behind there. There's so much corruption. Jeff, when you sleep at night, don't think everybody sleeps. There are people busy planning how to thief this country. And that's why when the government is asking for more taxes, we can't trust them. We have a trust deficit in this country, unfortunately. And now, as a clergy, because I need to be critical even to the church, is we have now a truth deficit when it comes to clergy. Can they be trusted? No.
Someone once said, Reverend that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We keep re-electing these leaders. It's the same, the usual suspects over and over again. I mean, what is it going to take? Well,
sometimes I have a radical mind, but in the last election, I beseeched my daughter to go to register as a voter. And she kept telling me, Dad, to elect who? And the voter apathy that you saw, many young people never registered for election. You know, when you see revolutions happening in countries, and we've seen them happen in some African countries, but also in the Arab countries, uprisings can happen in a country. When the government pushes people too hard, people will stand. Try that with a cat or a dog or whichever animal, we will get tired. And Kenyans, let me tell you, and I'm not saying this because I'm leaving, because even if I leave, I'm Kenyan. Let me tell you, you will have to say no. You see, if you go to Europe, people are taxed almost 30, 40%.
Yep.
But when it comes to school, education, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to amenities, when it comes to people accessing loans to buy homes and all that, it's affordable. Surely, if you asked me for 40% and you provide everything, I would be very happy. If the government invested in education and healthcare, the private hospitals and schools would not thrive. But who are the owners of these schools and hospitals? They are the same rich political leadership. Unfortunately, Jeff.
And now they're telling you to pay a 3% housing tax.
Jeff, let me comment on that because I had alluded to it earlier. You know, let the government come out and come out clearly. what are they asking Kenyans to do? Is that a tax? If it's a tax, then you're overtaxing Kenyans. But if you're calling it a savings, then you don't legislate a savings. It is voluntary.
Correct.
Just like, what do you call this money that they give as a hustler?
Yes, fund. Yes.
Yeah, it's a voluntary thing.
Correct.
You take it if you want it. Even housing is the same. I'm not an economist or land specialist, but whenever I study and observe things whenever I studied in the US and in Britain, what the government does is, one, create an environment where business can thrive. Allow the public sector to do business. They generate wealth, they pay taxes, and then the government offers infrastructure, roads, water, electricity. Jeff, if you go to some places in the US, the government only puts those things. And then developers come, do their research, make fabricated houses that are affordable. And some of the interest rates are 3 or 4%. That way, people get homes. No government in the world, and I would like to be challenged if I'm wrong, no government in the world builds houses for its own citizen. Their work is to create environment for business and trade to work, then provide infrastructure. Nowadays, have you been to some places in Kajiado? Some places people live are not habitable. Some roads were started, even abandoned. Some of the conditions that our people live in are deplorable. And so then when you now come telling us about 3%, why should I be charged for that? Jeff, how long will 3%, if 3% is 30,000, for example, how long will I have to pay to own a home?
Until you're in your hundreds.
In my hundreds. My children will not even have it. Then today I had the minister talking about, no, if you don't need a house, you'll give it to your children. Who said I can't give my children housing? And again, my children with good environment, they will work hard and also find their solutions during their time. Personally, and I, even as I live, I tell Kenyans, if the government pushes this, say no to it. This country doesn't belong to government. The sovereignty of this country is on its people, and we can say no. And if any member of parliament supports this, because now they have been silenced, don't elect them and call them. Take your constitutional right to say no to overtaxation. Otherwise, don't try to baptize this baby, oh, it's a saving.
Yeah.
If it's a tax, tell us it's a tax. Yet you are the same government that promised that upon your election, you will reduce the cost of living. But Jeff, let me finish that by saying it's even sadder in Kenya that we used to look at the opposition as the savior of this country. The opposition is in shambles.
Yeah.
There is no opposition that can stand against people. And by the way, standing against people is not this maandamano they do and a lot of looting and destruction. No. Do you know you can do maandamano without any destruction and you bring a country to a standstill? That has happened in many countries, even in Europe. Ours is stealing. And I don't know why even the Raila doesn't condemn such things. So we are between a hard rock and the devil. The opposition in this country cannot help us. So people must say, time has come then for us to take this one up.
Yeah, between the devil and the deep blue sea, they say. Did you ever think of running for office in your time? Have you ever thought of that?
I have, okay. Yeah, sometimes I feel, because of the pain and the burden that I carry for people, I could stand for a political position. It's interesting you're asking that because last year, many people came to my office asking me, Provost, could you consider either Nairobi or some people from home asking me, we would like your voice in there. I wouldn't give details because some of the things that I was being asked to do shocked me that people would think of me that way. For me, what I feel called is to be a prophet, to have a prophetic voice that continues to speak. Affirms in private, affirms in public. Critiques in private, critiques in public. That is the role of a prophet. And whenever God raised a king, there was a prophet. And it's sad that the church today is failing in its prophetic role, because we were not called to amass wealth or to have big following. We were called to speak the truth. And I think that's where I feel called. I don't think I'll run for any political position, but my voice will remain, because it's a burden that God has put.
Yeah. Coming back to the opposition, you spoke about it, the government and the opposition. Last time there was a handshake that brought a lot of peace. I mean, the country was on the edge back in 2017, 2018. And then peace prevailed on March 9th, 2018, after the handshake. What do you see going forward? I mean, with bipartisan talk, start, stop, start, stop. It's like, they're going nowhere. And if they go back to Mandamano, it's not going to do anything for this country.
No, it won't. But also, Jeff, it's also good for us to also speak truth to whether the government or the opposition. We are not in an election. Kenyans went, was it in August?
August.
To go and do the voting. We did the voting. We expressed our democratic right. The president was declared, and there were not two, there was only one. Then there was a dispute. The Constitution gives the mechanisms of dealing with disputes. They went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court looked at the facts. They didn't listen to the emotions, but they looked at the facts that were presented from both sides. They made a ruling, and the Constitution is clear. Once the Supreme Court does that, the president is sworn in. Ruto is our president. Like him, hate him, he is. Because the court and the people declared that. I'm saying this because I see this culture that we don't like talking about it because we look like we don't like the opposition. It's not about liking. For me, if Honorable Raila was declared the president, today I would call him the president, because it's not about my wish. It's about the Constitution and its people. And so what I would tell Mzee Raila is it doesn't help to keep fighting. Allow the people now to work, then hold the government accountable. What they are doing now is playing ping pong. They either sit down and talk, or they leave it and wait for the next about 4.5 years. Otherwise, what we are hearing is not good. But let me also say, I like Kenyans. In a way, we are not too bothered about that. We need to feed our children and pay school fees. We can't keep Mandamano alive. No, then you polarize the country. And so even as they talk, issues of, you can broker peace, and diplomacy is actually very good. But we need to be careful that we don't create a culture that will keep repeating and repeating every 5 years. A dispute comes, and then, no, that culture is bad. Let people learn to respect the institutions that have been put in place.
Absolutely. Ken, I want to take another break, come back, talk about moving forward. Are you looking forward to your new job? And also, do you have a favorite verse in the Bible?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yes.
But did you know that God's name is Howard?
Oh, Howard?
Yeah. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Howard sounds very British. No, it's not Howard.
It's not Howard.
Be careful. We have many Shakaholas now, and it started that way with people preaching that God is called Howard. Anyway,
and then it went downhill.
It's on a light note.
Wow, what an enlightening conversation we're having with the Provost, outgoing Provost of All Saints Cathedral. The very Reverend Canon Dr. Sammy Wainaina on the bench today. He's off to the UK in a couple of weeks, a new assignment. He's leaving us with some really wise thoughts. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll be back with a lot of your comments